Thor, the mighty thunder god himself, is my 5th favorite character in Divine Knockout, and he's a lot of fun. I love spinning around with my hammer doing Berserker's Barrage and knocking people out, especially when you get an awesome chance to do some nice 1v2s. I believe Thor is one of those characters that allows for 1v2s to happen very easily. So with that, I was like, you know what? Let me make a guide on Thor. So let's get straight into that. We're going to start off here with his Divine trait. Out of all the Divine traits, you're going to choose Strikes Twice. Dealing a critical strike with Mjolnir's attunement reduces the cooldown by 3.5 seconds. I love hitting people out with Mjolnir or just using Mjolnir to buy me time. It's one of the mainstays of Thor's kit. Next up, we're going to head off into the minor traits. The first minor trait we're going to use is called Grand Slam. Berserker's Barrage deals an additional 5 damage and 15% knockback on its final hit. This is super important for this build. This is what I use to 1v2 all the time or just to buy myself time. And let me tell you, this build has actually brought me success in all game modes, 1v1, 2v2, and 3v3. It's the most success I've had in a 1v2 matchup as well, and the best part is, it's easy to play. I'll give you some nice tips on how to make that happen later on in the video. Now, we're going up onto the next minor trait, which is going to be Spinning Spree. Berserker's Barrage increases movement speed by an additional 15% while firing. This is actually also very important for the build, as there will be times where you need to catch up to your opponent as they're trying to run away, or simply not starting your Berserker's Barrage right next to your opponent, so it's an easy way to get close to them and knock them out and be that great hammer boy you are. Next up, for the last minor trait, I'm actually going to give you 2 options because that's what I use. Option number 1 is Capacitor. First enemy hit by Mjolnir's attunement grants an additional 5% ultimate charge, then 2% per additional enemy hit. Now, I personally use this most of the time. It works well. It charges up my ultimate just a little bit, and you know, it doesn't need to be that fast since your ultimate for Thor is not the greatest and it's easy to dodge out. The next one I do use is Distant Thunder. Anvil of Dawn's range is increased by an additional 15 meters. Now, this is also perfect because I like the fact that I can land Anvil of Dawn. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're going up against a really good player, half the time you're going to miss your Anvil of Dawn, which is okay. But at the same time, with your skill, you should be able to land it at least once, maybe twice in a matchup, especially if it's in teams. If it's in 1v1, all you gotta do is bait that dodge or outplay them and you'll be able to stun them, giving you a nice sweet knockout victory. Now we're going to start to cover Greater Blessings. Now you heard me, Greater Blessings. I'm going to give you 3 options, but I'm first going to start off with the one I use most of the time, which is Athena's Wisdom. Hits against you deal a reduced 20% knockback for 3 seconds after dodging. I personally believe this is super important as Thor feels very squishy in my opinion, so having this really does protect you, especially if you're going up against certain characters like Loki or Sun Wukong. They have very high knockback, sometimes even Amaterasu. Next up for the Greater Blessings choice, I do use Amaterasu's Luminescence. Activating your ultimate resets the cooldown on your 3rd ability, because I love to use Berserker's Barrage, spin around, then pop my ultimate, and then if they somehow survive, because I missed my ultimate, because as I said earlier, Thor's ultimate is very easy to miss. You can always spin like a Beyblade again and use your Berserker's Barrage to either knock them back or fear them off so they don't come in and attack you. And last up, you can use Saul's Temper. Saul's Temper, I've been using it a little more often on 3v3, but at the same time, it's still good. Deal an additional 15% damage to the last enemy that you knocked out in a round. Deal an additional 10% damage if you have not been knocked out yet in a round. So either way, it's success all the way around. Now with that being said, that's all his traits, blessings, and now we're going to go into my favorite part of the video where I give you tips on how to play Thor like the best hammer boy you can possibly be. So with that being said, we're going to start off here with tip number 1, Berserker's Barrage. What you're going to know about Berserker's Barrage is you do not start it close to your opponent. Well, not too close anyways. You want to be able to spin like a Beyblade as fast as possible and as long as possible. If you somehow bait their dodge before you use it, you're guaranteed to hit them with that last rotation, which has an additional 20% knockback due to the minor trait we took. Another thing you want to note as well, if you're facing off against a Loki or somebody that's invisible, mainly Loki because Izanami likes to play tricks. Lokis like to stay invisible and look for an opening to come and attack you because when they come out of stealth, they allow you to get poisoned. Using Berserker's Barrage when you believe they're coming close, normally 9 out of 10 times does hit the Loki, which is very good for you and allows you to stay safe. Next up, we're going to go with Mjolnir's attunement. Now, with this, what makes this so perfect is that you're able to throw Mjolnir and knock people out. Pay attention that when Mjolnir goes its full distance, it will discharge massive electrical energy, and if it does hit your enemy, it will critical strike or knock them back. So it's a perfect way when you have somebody out of the map that you throw your Mjolnir's attunement and it goes boom, knocking them straight out of the map, giving you that victory. Also note that you can use it to buy some time. Missing Mjolnir's attunement is not good, however. If you do miss it, it does cost you a lot, as the cooldown is going to be the full cooldown, which isn't so wonderful for you, of course. Next up, you have Anvil of Dawn, where you come down crashing with the thunder from the skies, stunning your opponents. Now, this stun is very similar to King Arthur's and Ymir's in my opinion, where once you stun your opponent, if their vulnerability is high, you're guaranteed to get a knockout most of the time. I mean, not as much as those other two characters, but it does work. Also note that when you do stun them, what I like to do if their vulnerability is not high, just continue on with a nice light attack volley. Using that heavy attack sometimes just isn't worth it, as you don't really have a spike, and your heavy attack against these opponents doesn't have that extra boost to knock them out. So note that is very important. Another thing you also need to note with Anvil of Dawn, if you do however bait their dodge, you will have an easier time coming in with your mobility to stun them. Or you can do what I do sometimes, which is use your 10,000 IQ and somehow predict where they're going to be before they even know it and stun them. And let me tell you, it's hilarious every single time. Last but not least, we're going to talk about his ultimate, Tectonic Rift. Now, what makes this special is if the person is over 80% vulnerability, you have a high chance to knock them out. If they're over 100%, you're guaranteed more or less to knock them out. But at the same time, it's so easy to miss. In my opinion, it's very much like Sasuno's, and you can easily dodge out of this or just walk away to the side. So when using this ultimate, it's better if you wait for them to come in on you and you use this to get that little bit of immunity and then hit them with it directly. Using it at a distance most of the time will miss. I rarely ever hit it at a distance. Normally it's when it's going up against a very new player. Another thing to note, which is the last tip, his air light into air heavy is so good. The warp distance allows you to curve in the air perfectly, so pay very close attention to that. And that covers the Thor guide. I'd give him a solid 9 out of 10 spicy chicken nuggets. Now, if you would like more tips or understand how to play him or the psychology of Thor, just watch any of my Thor gameplay videos where I try to break it down with commentary for you. I hope this guy taught you something about Thor, the Thunder God himself, the strong boy, and I will see you next time. Bye!